Today I want to talk with you about loving your country as a spiritual practice. And I think some people think that right now is a terrible time for our country. But I would like to challenge those who think that to consider that maybe it's the way we think about our country right now that's terrible. And that there is a way to love our country into its greatness, even if we think it's going through difficult times or if we don't like the leadership, whatever it may be. I love something that the great John McCain said. He said, "We are the heirs and caretakers of freedom, a blessing preserved with the blood of heroes down through the ages. Love of country is another way of saying love of your fellow countrymen. Patriotism is another way of saying service to a cause greater than self-interest. If you find faults with our country, make it a better one. If you are disappointed with the mistakes of government, join its ranks and work to correct them. The good citizen and patriot knows happiness is greater than comfort, more sublime than pleasure. The cynical and indifferent know not what they miss, for their mistake is an impediment not only to our progress as a civilization, but to their happiness as individuals." What do I mean about the terrible way we sometimes think about our country? I mean polarized partisanship. The belief in our country that seems to be growing and growing that there are two sides, liberal and conservative, and they are against each other. When the truth is, even when we think upon our own mind, there is a conservative pole and a liberal pole. A pole that moves towards progressive, newness, freshness, and one on security, on safety, on being conservative. The idea is that these are not two separate sides to be at war with one another, but two separate poles that we seek to create a medium between, a balance, a harmony. Another way we think terribly about our country comes out of this othering of polarities. It has to do with dehumanizing our politicians. Trust me, there are politicians who I am not a fan of, but I'm a fan of them, not a fan of them because of their policies and because of whatever it is that they do, not who they are as people. I would like to think that in our country it's still something to be respected, someone who seeks to be of public office, who puts them out there to be voted upon. And so I think everyone who's serving our country, whether it's an elected position or they're in our agriculture department or in our State Department or at our Pentagon, deserves our respect, especially as human beings. And when we dehumanize them online, speak ill of them, we can criticize, but when we criticize who they are, we've lost the American spirit and the American way. Lastly, the way we think terribly about our country is when we just associate it with the government leaders at the time. I know the government leaders at the time are representing our country, but they're just a snapshot. America is Thomas Jefferson and Franklin D. Roosevelt and George H. and George W. Bush and Barack Obama and Donald Trump, but it's also Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Eleanor Roosevelt, Martin Luther King Jr. America is all of these people who have been demonstrated to answer the prayer of the United States of America, the prayer of freedom and equality and the pursuit of happiness for all people. It's the greatest prayer that's ever been written, and I believe in it not only for the people of the United States of America, but for people everywhere. It is a very article of faith of our teaching here in Science of Mind. And that's why I think loving your country is a spiritual practice, because we want that prayer to be realized by all. J. Rufus Fears, a great philosopher and teacher, he talked about three kinds of freedom. And it's interesting to put the prism of these three types of freedom on any nation. The first he called individual freedom. Think about how in America we value the freedom to do whatever it is that you want as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. Kind of a spiritual libertarianism. And so that's one type of freedom, the country that helps ensure individual liberties. The second type of freedom is political freedom. This is the ability to have a democracy, to say, I may not like who got elected, but I believe in political freedom, that we should be able to vote on our elected leaders and that it should be safe and secure for all to do just that. And part of being in a democracy is you deal with the results whether you like it or not. Sucks sometimes, but that's how it goes. So political freedom. Lastly is national freedom. This is the ability of a country to operate the way that it wants to with autonomy and not with the pressure or force of other nations. It's interesting when we think of a country like China that doesn't necessarily value individual freedoms, and we know it doesn't value democratic freedoms, but they do value national freedom. And that's why so many people within the People's Republic of China, for example, still support their government, even though it may be abhorrent to some of us watching from the outside. And I think part of loving your country as a spiritual practice is realizing we value all of these types of freedom. A story that's little told happened in 1941. It was just before World War II, and George Marshall was the chief of staff of the military. Imagine being the chief of staff for the military during World War II. No computers, no text messaging, none of all these little messaging sites that we see in the news today. And it was decided that it was going to be really important to delay the service requirements for over 100,000 troops in the military to extend their service because the war might be coming. And this was a very unpopular position among the Congress. And Marshall had to go and talk to senators and congresspeople to help them make this choice towards the national freedom. And yet there was so much focus on the individual freedom and anti-Roosevelt, who was president at the time, of course, sentiment that so many of the Congress people said, that Roosevelt, I hate him so much. If he wants me to do something, I'm not going to do it on principle. And Marshall had to challenge these senators, challenge these Congress people to think about the national freedom of the United States of America. Well, the Senate came through, but we didn't know what was going to happen with the Congress. Even the Speaker of the House, Sam Rayburn, didn't know how the vote was going to do. And I'm not going to look at my notes, but it was something like 232 to 231, whatever it was. It was only by one vote that the Congress passed that measure, and soon after that, Pearl Harbor would be attacked. And if we did not have that military in place, we may have not done everything that we can to end Hitler's reign towards terror and to defeat Japan in the war. And so I only bring that up to say is sometimes it only takes one vote, one shift in this incredible thing called American democracy to help preserve national freedom, political freedom, personal freedom. I invite you to think today about those three things, which one you value most, but to also realize part of being an American is supporting all three. You don't have to love your country's leaders in order to love your country. In fact, part of being an American is realizing that you are as valuable as any other leader or representative of government out there. And as we move into celebrating the 4th of July, let us remember all of those incredible beings, whether they served in military or they were protesters, that helped make our country great and representative of this incredible prayer of liberty, of justice, of the pursuit of happiness for all. So just taking a moment today to give thanks for the United States of America, not only for its geographic land, but for the prayer of well-being, of freedom, of the pursuit of happiness for all people. How can I realize this freedom in myself today? And how can I practice this freedom by living for a cause greater than myself, of wanting freedom for each and every being? Ernest Holmes in this thing called You says, if you want to stay out of hell, then no one can ever be in it. I think this is true of freedom as well, that if you want to be free, then you want to seek freedom for all people everywhere. What does it mean to hold that vision and to embody a greater level of that freedom for ourselves? Giving thanks for the individual freedoms in America, giving thanks for the political freedoms and for our national freedom. Let us imagine how we can even be more free. And yes, sometimes with criticism, sometimes with tough love, we love our country into being its greatness, but sometimes we just have to be willing to expand our point of view, to have faith in that this prayer of the United States cannot be diminished by any person, by any way of thinking. That although our democracy is fragile, it is also held in an unchangeable strength of the heart. And as we believe in that and start practicing that and start practicing our oneness point of view in every area of our life, including within the political sphere, I know we help make that prayer possible to be demonstrated right here and right now. And so it is. Amen.